Now, a debate between Zach Plansky and Anne Widdecombe on Jeremy Vine has made the rounds, as Anne Widdecombe seems to claim that wealth taxes equals communism.
All the people you described, that as far as you're concerned, if you've got that money, that value in an asset, you shouldn't be able to pass it on to your children. That should go into the public pot and be used for public services.
Well, that's a question about taxation reform.
No, it's a direct question.
No, and I largely agree, but things like bringing capital gains tax in line with income tax, right now, a whole kind of tax system is weighed unfairly so that it's hitting poorer people hardest. What I'm really suggesting is that those with the broadest shoulders need to carry the biggest
You've got to give it to him, Anne. That is an ideological point of view. It's a very clear, you might say, red water between the Green Party, who are the party of the left now, and the Labour Party.
And if you look at countries who have practiced communism, which is pretty well all what that is, if you look at countries which have practiced trying to level, not opportunity, but trying to level actual holding of wealth, they haven't really done so well.
Well, I think that's untrue. If you look at somewhere like Switzerland, that has a wealth tax, and actually they seem to be doing pretty well. There's lots of other countries around the world that have looked at wealth taxes. And fundamentally, I think most people agree that when people are really, really struggling, those with inordinate amounts of wealth, I'm not talking about small shop owners, I'm not talking about small business holders.
When it comes to inheritance tax,
you are when it comes earning more money while asleep than any of us could earn in a
lifetime. You are talking about those people.
I mean, everything is communism these days. Obviously, a completely moronic thing to say. And this is a talking point from the right wing, that leftists want to make everyone equally poor. And since everyone's equal, mission accomplished. Many nations that have had higher taxes and better public investment have led to millions escaping poverty. Our own country, during the 60s, had a marginal tax rate of 90%. Yet we're not even talking about income tax. It's wealth taxes. Those who earn off assets, who generate passive income, that's not even taxed. It's an utterly ridiculous argument. And also that bit at the end where he said, look, I'm talking about the super rich. And Anna Widdecombe saying, well, no, eventually you're going to hit the small businesses. Why is that? In fact, small businesses are struggling and medium-sized businesses are struggling because there's a lack of competition and everything is being bought up. Everything is being monopolized. I mean, I hear about pubs, right? We're hearing that the pub is going down the drain, which I don't know. I don't see it, but obviously I definitely hear when pub landlords are saying they're struggling, right? And a lot of them turn around and say, yeah, the taxes on us, it's ridiculous. As if that's the main issue. The main issue is the fact that we've got big sort of brewers who are monopolizing everything. And when you have a market that's completely monopolized, you get priced out. So, in fact, you want to increase taxes, you want wealth taxes on the very richest, so to reduce their power. That's the entire point of it. As Ben was saying earlier, taxes are really incentive structure. You want to incentivize good things, so you want to cut taxes for electric vehicles, shall we say, and you want to increase taxes on fossil fuel companies. I mean, you want to increase tax on companies anyway, but it's all about an incentive structure. Ben, I want to get your response to Anne. I mean, apparently taxes equate to communism, and it's not a stateless, classless, moneyless society.
So it's the classic sort of communism is when the government does stuff argument. I think when it comes to her argument, like, obviously that's not what communism is. I would say that taxes are like applied so that society can function. And it's always worth bearing in mind that the wealthy would not have their wealth without taxation. Like, there's no scenario in which the wealthy are able to gather the wealth that they get without taxation being somewhere in that cycle. Like, taxation will train their workforce, it'll keep their workforce healthy, it will stabilize the currency that they use and provide security, both in terms of like fire services, to protect their assets, and also security in terms of stopping people just stealing stuff from their assets in terms of policing. Like the state and the things which the state spends on in a capitalist society are designed to protect capitalist assets. It's it's not a difficult calculation. In fact, if you look at Franklin D. Roosevelt and the New Deal, the economist Richard Wolff often tells this story of Franklin D. Roosevelt taking the business leaders at the time into a room and saying, look, if you don't accept higher taxes, if we don't have a new deal for this country, if we don't start providing for the working class of this country, then Soviet style communism is coming here, because you won't be able to carry on like this. You won't be able to carry on treating people like this, because your businesses are going to start collapsing if your workers can't afford to feed themselves, because you refuse to pay your taxes, and you refuse to be taxed at a decent rate. If we've got poor public services, poor transportation, your workers are going to stop spending in the economy. And when they stop spending in the economy, that is when you are truly fucked, because your businesses will start to collapse. And we see this in the UK, like businesses collapse in the high street all the time because no one can afford to spend in those businesses. It's worth just for a bit of trivia. Karl Marx did actually argue against the idea that workers should receive the entire value of their labor in Critique of the Gotha program, because some would inevitably have to go to social programs like social housing, disability care, all of the things that are necessary for like a society to function. And like, if Karl Marx did recognize this, but it shows that there were competing ideas of socialism and communism that had different ideas around it. Like, taxation isn't inherently communist; it's not inherently capitalist. It depends on the society that you live in. But one of the great things about taxation and progressive taxation is it applies what's called the difference principle. The idea that inequalities within society should benefit the least advantaged the most, and the most advantaged the least. And the people who are suffering inheritance tax, who are getting taxed inheritance tax, are, because they own assets over 325,000, are the most advantaged. So they should get the least advantage from our system. They should be taxed the most.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose it's impossible for a worker to receive 100% of their value, because part of that surplus value has to go back into the business anyway. And I think most Marxists understand that. I also think, I mean, I very much agree that whether you want to call it like a workers' tax, right, that should be reinvested into the state to pay for social programs. That is what distinguishes, I would say, socialism to communism, whereas communism is the state withering away, which is, once again, it's ironic when you've got right-wingers who say that taxes are communism, but actually, if you think about it, there are no taxes under communism, kind of. Not at a state level anyway. If you were to take the sort of analysis of communism that I take, which is a stateless, moneyless class of society, you wouldn't really have sort of national taxes, which is quite ironic. And also, taxes predates capitalism. It's existed for a long, long time. It's how you leverage it, but it's incredible. What you were saying actually as well about people and businesses need more money to participate in the economy in a more meaningful way. Anne Widdecombe, I mean, it's not in this clip, but it's in the same interview or debate. She says that, right? But she says, and that's why taxes need to come down. And I hear this from right wingers. And as I was just saying about the pub landlord analogy, right? Right wingers are annoyed about the cost of living, right? They recognize, as much as to the left, that things are too expensive. But then they think that taxes are the one that we should target, right? The thing is, though, most people, I think it's most people anyway, pay 20% in taxes, okay? 20%, I don't think is that much, right? Compared to social democratic countries in Europe, it's very low. I mean, what they're getting for their increased taxes is far better, by the way. But it's not very high. Now, if Reform were to get in and say, right, we're going to cut taxes for the lowest people, like increase the threshold, or those on 20% will go down to 15%. First of all, think of the trade-off. I mean, what's going to get cut in terms of public services? A lot, and they will have their excuses to do it. But 5% of your wage isn't really that much in the grand scheme of things. Whereas people are paying most of their wages on rents, mortgages, their bills. So I'm really annoyed, and I kind of don't really understand it when right-wingers are so obsessed about taxation, when that won't make a difference. But the cost of living, the cost of, I mean, mortgages have obviously skyrocketed under the Conservative government. Rent has always been really, really high. If you want to tackle costs, you need to tackle those things. Taxes won't make any difference. In fact, taxes are such a bang for your buck. The fact that we're paying 20%, even for some people 30, 40%, And what you're getting in return, even with an austerity-ridden Britain, it's quite impressive. I mean, it's the public versus private tax. You have a public tax where it goes through the states, you get your public services back. America, they tax people on healthcare, but it's a private tax. It's not done through the state. It's not administered through the state. It's administered through insurance companies. But what you pay for your base level insurance plus premiums is so expensive. And actually, sort of national healthcare and public services are insurance programs. It's just that more people buy into the system, and it's just mandated. It's actually, ironically, when we talk about like sort of the UK health insurance system and the American health insurance system as the two different systems, they're actually kind of the same, right? We're just the sort of logical endpoint of health insurance, because the idea of health insurance is to get as many people covered as possible, which makes it cheaper for everyone. And we just go that step further and say, okay, we're going to cover as many people as possible by doing it through the state, and we're just going to automatically collect your insurance premiums through taxes. It's very simple, and it makes it better for everyone.
Yeah, we save so much through primary care, particularly because we treat people early. People don't feel that they have to pay to go to the doctor.
Well, that's why the NHS, in terms of UK healthcare, sorry to cut you off, it's cheaper per capita. I think the US pays double the amount of. I think the US pays twice the amount on healthcare per capita than the UK, and yet we're told by right wingers, Reem Ibrahim from the IEA, that actually national programs are really bloated and bureaucratic.
Yeah, like I think that is the perfect comparison with what Anne Widdecombe's trying to sell you. It's this idea people wouldn't have more money in their pocket necessarily if you cut taxes. That's not a good calculation to make, because like you say, in the US they don't have any spending or they do spend inevitably subsidizing healthcare, but they don't have tax supported healthcare for like we do here, in terms of the NHS, and they end up shelling out more, and it's kind of the same in our situation. Like if we pay a little bit more, but we nationalize water, energy, rail, mail, like all of those things, we'll probably end up shelling out less in the end, but we're blind to that fact. And reform, I don't think, are blind to that fact. I think a lot of them don't want to promote anything which might upset their billionaire donors. Like I think that's pretty much where it comes from. And also, let's not forget the pensioners that support reform, who don't want any form of like taxation on assets which they potentially want to pass to their children, which is an understandable point of view. But also, if you're that worried, you can gift it. You can make that gift as soon as you can. But also, if they're closing this loophole, then I think they should open up another loophole, which is progressively incentivized. I really like the idea of letting houses be bought by the state and become council houses, because then you diversify the council housing stock, and council houses will start to lose this sort of bad reputation of being, somewhere that's like run down and poorly looked after. If we actually invest in council housing and buying back some council housing, that's superb. That's the kind of thing we want.
Support independent media. Support social justice that's there on social media. Thank you. Turn left.